Cannibalism, historically and anthropologically defined as the consumption of human flesh by other humans, has occupied a complex and controversial space in cultural narratives. Understanding cannibalism within the context of history involves disentangling myths from reality and requires a nuanced examination of its occurrence across different societies and epochs. This concept is significant because it challenges our perceptions of morality and humanity's darker instincts, offering insights into survival mechanisms, cultural practices, and the power dynamics at play during historical encounters. For instance, in Papua New Guinea, the Fore people's practice of endocannibalism, meaning consuming the flesh of members within one's own community, was a ritual meant to honor the deceased. Such customs were tied to beliefs about life, death, and the afterlife, deeply rooted in the societal and spiritual fabric of the community. In contrast, during the Siege of Leningrad in World War II, acts of cannibalism were born out of sheer necessity and survival, showcasing how extreme conditions can force humans into decisions they would not usually consider. These distinct examples highlight that cannibalism cannot be painted with a broad brush, but instead varies significantly in context and meaning. Traditional narratives often revolve around the sensationalism of cannibalistic acts, often portraying them as evidence of savagery or barbarism. Scholars like anthropologist William Arens, in his seminal work, The Man-Eating Myth, argue that many reports of cannibalism are often exaggerated or fabricated, influenced by colonial agendas that stigmatized indigenous peoples. These opinions invite us to reconsider accounts of cannibalism as possibly biased interpretations rather than objective realities. The challenge lies in discerning truth from myth, as cannibalism is shrouded in controversies, often amplifying the stigmatization of certain cultures. Accusations might have been wielded as tools of political and cultural superiority by colonial powers. Alternative viewpoints arise from examining archaeological and forensic evidence that either supports or contradicts historical accounts of cannibalism, prompting debate among experts. Contextualizing cannibalism in history allows us to explore the complex relationship between myth and reality, influencing how we understand the interplay of survival, culture, and moral judgment. By examining the contexts in which cannibalism historically occurred, we deepen our understanding of human behavior and culture, challenging preconceived notions and encouraging a more open-minded view of humanity's diverse practices. Cannibalism, often defined as the act of consuming individuals of one's own species, is a concept that has long sparked intrigue and revulsion in equal measure. Within the context of historical cultures, the question of whether cannibalism is myth or reality becomes a focal point of anthropological inquiry. This topic not only probes the veracity of cannibalistic practices, but also explores their cultural, social, and ritualistic significance. The importance of examining cannibalism in historical cultures lies in its potential to reveal intricate social structures and cultural attitudes. For some societies, cannibalism was not merely a survival mechanism, but was also imbued with spiritual and ritual significance. Understanding this aspect can provide deeper insights into the societal norms and belief systems of ancient cultures, challenging our modern perceptions of morality and civility. For example, the Aztecs are often cited in discussions of ritualistic cannibalism. In their society, human sacrifice and the subsequent consumption of flesh were believed to honor the gods and sustain cosmic balance. Similarly, the Fore people of Papua New Guinea practiced endocannibalism as part of funerary rites. Here, consuming the deceased was an expression of respect and a means to spiritually bond with them after death. These cultures demonstrate that cannibalism can serve complex cultural functions beyond mere sustenance. Supporters of the ritualistic interpretation argue that cannibalism in these contexts was not an indicator of savagery, but rather a symbolic act dictated by cultural norms. Anthropological studies, such as those by Marvin Harris, suggest that cannibalism might have been overstated by colonial powers to justify subjugation and delegitimize indigenous societies. However, controversies abound, with some scholars questioning the reliability of historical accounts, which were often recorded by outsiders with limited understanding of the local cultures. This external perspective may have contributed to misconceptions or exaggerations, leading to broad generalizations about cannibalism. Alternative viewpoints suggest that some alleged cases of cannibalism were either symbolic or misinterpreted entirely. Cannibalism's connection to other aspects of the main topic lies in its ability to challenge our understanding of cultural relativism. It prompts questions about how cultural practices are perceived by outsiders and how these perceptions impact historical narratives. The exploration of cannibalism in historical cultures thus becomes an essential gateway to understanding broader themes of cultural identity, influence, and the power dynamics inherent in the recording and interpretation of history. Cannibalism in ancient civilizations refers to the practice of consuming human flesh within historical societies. This practice is often shrouded in a veil of myths versus reality, and exploring this concept involves examining archaeological evidence, historical records, and cultural interpretations. Evidence of cannibalism often comes from excavated human remains showing cut marks or signs of cooking, while interpretations involve understanding the cultural or ritual significance behind the practice, if any. This exploration is significant because it helps distinguish between sensationalized myths, often colored by colonial perspectives, and historical realities grounded in evidence and cultural context. Several ancient societies have been associated with cannibalistic practices. The Anasazi people of the American Southwest, for instance, present intriguing archaeological evidence. Certain sites show bone modifications and tools indicating that cannibalistic acts may have been conducted either as part of ritualistic practices or survival in times of stress. Similarly, the Aztecs are often cited for their ritualistic human sacrifices, believed to be followed by consumption of flesh as a means to honor the gods and maintain cosmic order. Scholars like William Arens in The Man-Eating Myth have questioned the existence and scale of cannibalism, suggesting it might be exaggerated or misinterpreted, often used by conquering societies to portray others as savage. Others argue that cannibalism had legitimate cultural functions. Anthropologist Marvin Harris proposed it fulfilled nutritional needs in protein-scarce regions, while also fostering social cohesion or serving as a method of terror in warfare. However, controversies abound, as some experts question the interpretation of evidence, suggesting that marks on bones could result from funerary rites or post-mortem animal scavenging rather than cannibalism. Additionally, the role of cultural bias can't be ignored. Early European explorers often reported cannibalism among indigenous people as a pretext for colonial domination, presenting them as uncivilized. This highlights the importance of rigorous, unbiased analysis in understanding historical practices. Cannibalism in ancient civilizations ultimately intersects with larger themes of cultural relativism and historical bias within the broader discussion of myths and realities in historical cultures. By understanding the evidence and respecting cultural contexts, a clearer picture emerges of how societies understood and engaged with such practices, which challenges and enriches our perception of human history. This multifaceted inquiry invites reflection on how cultural narratives are constructed and serve to either illuminate or obscure reality. The heading Cannibalism in Historical Cultures, Myths or Reality delves into a complex intersection of anthropology, history, and cultural studies. At its core, the concept of cannibalism refers to the act of consuming individuals of one's own species. Within human societies, this has spurred countless narratives and controversies oscillating between myth and reality. The discussion of cannibalism is significant as it challenges perceptions of human nature and societal norms, often serving as a lens through which cultural misunderstandings and ethnocentric biases are examined. One notable example is the practice of endocannibalism among the Fore people of Papua New Guinea. This practice involved consuming deceased community members as a mark of respect and remembrance, believed to strengthen bonds among the living. However, this led to the transmission of kuru, a neurological disorder, ultimately proving fatal. This example highlights how practices may be rooted in cultural reverence rather than malice or barbarism. Another instance is the widespread but often unverified claims of cannibalistic rituals among various indigenous tribes during European colonial expansions. These stories were frequently exaggerated or fabricated to dehumanize and justify the colonization of these populations. Opinions on cannibalism are varied. Some anthropologists argue that early reports of ritualistic cannibalism were often the result of cultural misunderstandings or outright inventions by colonialists, thereby questioning their validity. Some scholars suggest that the moral outrage surrounding cannibalism reflects a deep-seated human repulsion towards breaching a fundamental human ethical boundary. However, others contend that categorizing ancient cannibalistic practices as myth risks dismissing genuine cultural rituals with legitimate social functions. The discourse on cannibalism faces challenges, particularly regarding the authenticity of historical accounts. Western narratives have often demonized cannibalism without understanding its cultural context, skewing perceptions. Consequently, there is an ongoing debate over the extent to which cannibalism was practiced versus the extent to which it was imagined or misrepresented. This topic influences broader discussions on cultural relativism, the authenticity of historical records, and the impact of colonial narratives on contemporary understandings. It prompts a re-evaluation of assumed moral universals and how they shape interpretations of civilized versus primitive societies. Thus, the question of cannibalism in historical cultures is more than a matter of fact-checking. It is an exploration into how myths can shape realities and reflect on the biases that influence our understanding of the past.